Hello, and welcome to my Lead What You Live podcast with Tina Lizzie. That's me. And I have a very unique and special guest with me today, a dear friend as well, Brennan Murphey. Brennan, welcome to Lead What You Live podcast.
Thank you so much, Tina.
I was really looking forward to this, us getting together here. Brennan and I met at in a mastermind in a warrior council last year. He also moved to South Florida from Taos, New Mexico, about a year ago, and so I've been had the pleasure of being able to see him more often since he moved here to South Florida, which has been great. But today, in particular, we're going to go on a journey with this gentleman. He is the founder of Harmonic Awakenings and the King's Chamber Mastermind. And we're going to get into that. He is big in leadership, leading men. And for those of you, most of you know that I am a life and leadership strategist. And I love having different guests on here to bring their knowledge, their insight, their wisdom that comes from their experience in what it is that they have lived in their life and are now leading others. I have worked on Wall Street, real estate, the mortgage financing of it, and different industries working predominantly with men. I work with a lot of male executives, entrepreneurs, and founders. And in particular, working with Brennan, getting to know Brennan, and working with him in the Mastermind and Warrior Council, we've had some great discussions about what is required in of leaders today, male leaders today. What are the challenges? What are the struggles? What are the opportunities? He is the son of a world-renowned musician, Michael Martin Murphey, famous for his song Wildfire, which I absolutely love. It reminds me of when I was a kid. My mom would play it all the time. And so we're going to talk about his history, mom and dad, and how he evolved as an amazing being. And so with no further ado, Brennan Murphey, again, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
How are you finding South Florida, by the way, coming from Taos, New Mexico last?
It's super different. Yeah, it's like it couldn't be more different. Like
Yeah, no kidding.
and that's part of why I chose it. New Mexico in general, it's like high desert, not that many people, very, because it's a high desert, there's like no water. It's not a really business focused kind of place. You don't have that much really happening there. There's not much traffic. There's just not many people, period. Right. But here it's just completely the opposite. It's like sea level, tons of people, tons of traffic. It's all about business. It's all about, this, it's such a different kind of place. So it's good though. I mean, I needed a change, so that's why I came here.
Well, welcome to the Sunshine State. I'm from the Northeast, but I've been here for 20 years in Palm Beach County, Florida. I love it. The palm trees never get old. And so super interesting. I have not been to Taos, but it is a very charming city that I hear from many who have visited. So I got to get out there.
Well, that's the one thing that is the same between the two. In fact, I would say New Mexico has more sunshine than the Sunshine State does overall.
Oh, really? So you went to desert to the tropics.
Well, yeah, there's almost never any clouds there.
Right.
Yeah, it's high desert.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So you have, growing up, the son of a famous musician, mom, a big spiritual being, a meditator. You did some incredible travels when you were a young child. Tell us about your childhood and your background.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's I was really very, very fortunate, to grow up where I did in the environment that I did. So yeah, it was like a lot of my childhood was spent between. My mother did like meditation classes like every single week for years and years and years. So I got introduced to that at a pretty early age. And then, my father was on tour a lot. And we would go to his shows and he was singing. So it was like, that was really, now what I do is really influenced by that because both of my parents really gave me, each of them gave me a profound gift and experience in, sharing what they were most passionate about with a lot of people. And I've been able to combine those together in a way that's pretty cool. So yeah, I mean, I had a pretty privileged childhood overall. I was kind of a spoiled brat actually. And
Sounds pretty cool,
I
actually. Were
got
you an only child?
no,
Okay.
I have an older brother and a younger sister. Um,
Middle child.
yeah, and but yeah, like I was kind of I don't know, how could you say it, the prodigal son kind of archetype when I was a kid. I was a valedictorian in my high school. I got great grades. I mean, I was like academically, I was almost perfect, and I got a lot of crap from that and got picked on a lot.
For being a smarty
Yeah,
pants.
by bullies and stuff like that. I was always the first target.
Interesting. I wouldn't have thought that.
Yeah, well,
Getting picked on for being smart.
yeah, and for being, basically a fairly spoiled brat too.
Right. For having a famous dad.
Yeah, and a lot of kids were jealous of what I had, and so they'd come over and be like, "Oh my God, how is this possible?" This is a small town in New Mexico, Taos, New Mexico. New Mexico in general, it's a pretty impoverished state, and so, we were one of the wealthiest families there. We had this massive ranch of like 20 acres and everything. That was what it was. So that's kind of all I knew. A lot of people ask, well, what's it like to grow up in a famous house? I don't know what it would have been
Would
like
you like
to
not
have
to?
not to. Yeah, exactly. Um, and there were, advantages and disadvantages, as anybody who's like the son of a famous person is going to tell you. But yeah, overall, I've been able to make it work for more for me than against me,
So you
at
come
least
out of high
recently.
school
Hmm.
at top of the class, and did you go into the music industry or
Yeah.
with your father?
Yeah, I got a merit-based scholarship to Berklee College of Music for guitar performance, and that was like my first when I first went into school, in college. But I didn't really like it. I didn't really like music school in particular, because I had a diverse range of interests. I was interested in all kinds of stuff, and so just being in music school, it wasn't enough. Even though I was passionate about guitar, I found there just wasn't enough intellectual engagement for me. So I ended up dropping out and then going to this small liberal arts college called St. John's College in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and then graduated from that and then moved to LA. And in LA, it was like, I don't know, I wanted to get into the music industry again, but it just, yeah, it was like, I kept kind of having a bunch of these sort of, false starts with music. I had a ton of them. And it's because I was, kind of trying to follow in my father's footsteps, but it really wasn't like my destiny. I just didn't quite get that. It took me quite a long time to kind of snap that,
You're
like,
having an identity sort
yeah, a
of,
little bit of an identity crisis kind
yes.
of thing, And so, but I started teaching music production when I was in LA, and that's where things really started to kind of take off for me. So if you really look at it, if you think of a classroom as a mastermind, that's like really where I started to find my power, because I was able to lead groups, of mostly of men, but sometimes women when I did the spiritual retreats and stuff. I was able to lead groups through, a journey or through a process where they could acquire a skill, whether it was music production or, ritual magic or whatever it was. So I picked a whole bunch of different things, but the one thing in common was I was leading groups from, from my mid 20s until now. That's still the main thing that I focus on.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so were you more interested in that, therefore, the production side of things than being a performer?
Well, I was interested in both. I mean, again, it's like it was more like I was interested in too many things. Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
understand
had
that.
so many interests that I was just like I wanted to learn everything. I wanted to be good at everything. I wanted to become an expert at
Hey, you're
everything.
the jack of none, master of all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I wanted, and it was great because I learned a lot of stuff, but it was also kind of a curse too, because like I lacked the necessary focus to really become elite at any of these things, or to be
You weren't wanting to pick a
disciplined or
lane.
consistent. Yeah, exactly. I kept switching lanes, trying to find
I
shortcuts.
understand that
Classic
well.
mistakes that everybody makes in their
Yes.
early career, right?
Right.
Yeah, to some extent.
And
Yeah.
so that led to, so you talked about leading also sort of ritual or spiritual retreats. How
Mhm.
did that come about?
Yeah, so that all came about because when I was in
Were you
Portland,
raised with religion, by the way, or?
well, sort of, yes and no. On my father's side, and his parents, yes, they were very insistent about us going to church and things like that.
Catholics?
Yeah, well, no, they were like Baptists.
Hmm.
Um, but then, and I never resonated that much with that, even though I did have some profound experiences in that realm and with Christianity. But then, yeah, my mother like went to India for several months out of the year into an ashram in the foothills of the Himalayas. So yeah, I mean, both of my parents, had that going on. But the thing is that their spiritual paths and their religions were so different. Like it could barely be more different. That conflict actually they had between these things was part of what tore them apart ultimately. Is that they just didn't really share the same values or paths or principles in the way that they,
View the
went toward
world, the
it. Yeah.
perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I kind of ended up going on my own road and, tried a bunch of different things out, and, so yeah, when I was in Portland after I left LA, I ended up, getting involved with this mystery school.
Yeah.
And
Tell me about this mystery school.
yeah, so,
It's a mystery.
if you don't, yeah, it's a mystery. Yeah, it is. Um, yeah, well, so, for anyone who's not familiar with what mystery schools are, they're kind of these like, not quite secret societies, but it's like they bring you through these kind of mysterious processes that are usually like spiritually focused and, you know, initiate you into learning these kind of odd, strange things that's kind of difficult to
Is it
understand. Yeah,
cultish?
stuff like Kabbalah and yeah, I mean, you look at how
I'm fascinated by Kabbalah, actually. I'd like
yeah,
to learn a
well,
little bit more about that.
and when you look at the beginnings of any religion, I mean, every major religion started off as a cult of some
Yeah.
kind. Now, whether it was a good cult or a bad cult, you can say yes or no, but I mean,
Right.
it's true of Christianity. It was seen as a
The
cult.
following.
It
There's a
wasn't the
following.
main religion for a long time, and Christians used to be persecuted, and they were seen as weird cultish people back then, right?
Yes.
So anyway, now everything's changed, but yeah. So when I was in Portland after I left Los Angeles, I got involved in this, and yeah, it was a really profound experience. And I ended up going and studying inside the mystery school for a couple of years. And then after I left, I started my own. I started doing spiritual retreats where I was teaching a lot of the same things, but with my own twist on it. And that was kind of like my second round of running these masterminds in these groups because in this case, it was retreats. It was like an intensive where we would spend like a weekend together. And then I would initiate everybody into these mysteries and teach them, energy healing, ritual magic, all these different things that I had learned there that I was using that had gotten me some pretty profound results.
Ritual magic,
Yeah.
like transformation.
Well,
It's transformative,
yeah,
I
well, again,
imagine.
the nature of this is such that it's like most people have never done this. And it's also very taboo in traditional religious circles, right? And so, so a lot of people are, well, what is that? What's ritual magic? Well, yeah, it's not prestidigitation. It's not illusion. It's not illusionism. It's not David Copperfield, right? um, so no, I mean it is.
I don't know. Jesus performed miracles.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And there's a whole group of people that basically say that he was a magician. I mean, there's some evidence to suggest that he was initiated into the mysteries of the Essenes, and that whole Essene group, which was like John the Baptist and stuff, all came out of the mystery schools of Egypt. But of course, it's difficult to find proof of a lot of this stuff because again, the stuff was what they were doing back then was taboo. That's what most people don't get, is like there's a reason why this guy was crucified. There's a reason why these people were hunted.
Yes.
just because the way that the average person saw them is the way that the average person now sees people who do probably ritual magic and this kind of stuff.
Right. Feels threatening.
Right, because it's
Threatening belief
people don't
systems.
understand it, and it's very easy to kind of demonize what you don't understand.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But essentially, I mean, it's really just a form of spiritual practice. It's been called by some people as like the yoga of the West, where it's like you just go through a set of rituals, and you work with your intention, and in that intention, you're putting energy into that intention, and then from that frame, it focuses your awareness and attention on a certain thing, and then that thing is going to be more likely to come about in your life.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I went on Dr. Joe Dispenza's advanced meditation retreat,
Yeah.
and we talked about
Yeah,
that.
I've been on one too. Yeah.
Yes, and so you had I spoke to you about that because knowing that you had also experienced that before I went, and so I really saw that sort of the quantum field and energy, frequency, vibration, and putting your intention on something, and in terms of for manifestation.
Correct.
Esther Hicks channeling Abraham. Abraham
Yep.
Hicks is also sort of along the lines of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And so you sort of made it your own, which is cool. So you have this sort of the religion meets the spirituality, the meditation, you've got the music, comes into this harmonic awakenings creation, And I love that instead of there, it sounds like you were taking, and again, in leadership, we take what we learn, and now the whole idea is go out and teach others. So, like, one of the best books that I think anyone can read personally or professionally is Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And so he's very much about take these frameworks, these effective frameworks, and go out and teach others, just as an example. And so you sort of, we take, and you and I, again, we were in a mastermind together in a council and learning different methodologies, frameworks about going from where we are and, discovering what do we want? What do we want? Where are we? How do we feel about where we are? What are the facts? What have we been focusing on? And what do we want? And going on a process. And there isn't one way. There isn't one way. And so I think it's super cool and very unique and interesting what you have focused on as something that really is supportive to take people through, a process in your, in particular, working with men in the King's Chamber. So Harmonic Awakenings is your creation, and yet you have this mastermind that I really want to talk further about. Before we get to that, from Oregon and doing the retreats and kind of making your own and energy work and breath work and music and probably mantras or chanting and all of these kind of things. From there, and you enjoying the production, both the performing production side of things, what became next? There was a big portion of your life where you kind of went into marketing and working with people in these industries, but there was a dimension there related to marketing of these things.
Yeah. Well, so in starting my spiritual retreat business and running it for several years, it was like I had this intuitive understanding of marketing on some level. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to get clients and I wouldn't have been able to fill out my retreats.
I'm asking because we have so many entrepreneurs that are out there that are liking to take now what they've lived and go lead it and become coaches and consultants and facilitators and teachers, and retreats is really big. And so you went on that path, and sharing your experience, I think, is very helpful for listeners.
Yeah. So I had the same experience, I think, that virtually anybody who starts a business and goes down the road far enough eventually has, which is they start to wake up to the fact that there's really only one business out there. There's really only one industry. It's regardless of whether you're, running a mastermind or you're selling cars or you're, trying to sell your performance as a musician. Like, you've got to get clients, you've got to get customers, you've got to get people to actually, sign up and pay you and do this thing, right?
Exactly.
And so really the only business in the world is like, it's like sales slash marketing, right? Where you need to find a way of getting leads, you know, whether it's, you know, organic and manual or whether it's automated or whatever it is. But like, if you don't work on that, like that is the work of growing a business. And it doesn't really matter what it is that you're selling. That's just fulfillment. You know, most of production is marketing, sales, you know, getting people in the door. You have to have some kind of a system for that if you're going to get a business to any sort of level. So when I woke up to this, I ended up, this was after I kind of had my first like coaching mastermind, and I was trying to fill my second group. And, you know, I had done pretty well and gotten 5 people in my first mastermind, but then I wanted to grow it. So I ended up, you know, joining a mastermind about marketing and like kind of just learning all of the intense science around that. And just kind of, I ended up starting a marketing agency for musicians and was sort of running that for a while. Ended up working with a bunch of different clients in a bunch of different industries. And, you know, and it was quite an experience because I saw such a wide variation of success. I got to see how business owners' mindsets literally determine like 80% of their success. That
The
regardless,
mindset.
yeah, that regardless of like what their experiences in business so far, that just because they've done well in the past didn't necessarily mean they had the right mindset now to succeed in this particular market, or that their strategy or their system was working. So anyway, I ran this marketing agency for years, and I just kind of shut that down at the end of last year, and I committed 100% to this mastermind because I realized that it was like, wow, you know, it's running a marketing agency. See, the thing is, like, every single business in the world needs marketing. So it's pretty easy to sell done for you marketing to businesses. The issue is, you know, fulfilling on it is not the easiest thing. And if the mindset of the business owner isn't in the right place, kind of doesn't matter how good you are, even at fulfilling, because they're going to insist on directing you into the wrong place. And if you let that happen, the whole thing falls apart. You know, most people who advertise on Facebook, they don't get a return on their investment. It has to do with the mindset part of it mainly. So
More so, you're saying, than the product being offered. The product is there, but the mindset of the person who's actually purchasing the marketing.
yeah, like let me give a little example here that I think is really relevant to this. So, you know, let's say if you're a business owner and you're running ads, let's say that you're running ads and you get a 5% return on your ad spend within 24 hours. In other words, your return on ad spend is 1.05. Okay. Are you going to be happy with that?
Not really.
Okay. Why not?
Well, first of all, I'm thinking about how to scale. Like how am I going to scale? That's coming to mind also.
Okay. Okay. So that's the first place where it just takes people right out of the game. Because if you do the math on compounding interest, you probably understand this because you've been in Wall Street, right?
Yes.
If I can make a 5% return on my investment, you know, 1.05, and I was like, get all my money back plus 5%, and I reinvest that the next day, and I get another 5% and another 5% and stuff like that. It only takes 2 weeks for that money to double.
But people being short-sighted are impatient.
Yeah, so if you take $1,000
Yes.
in 2 weeks, just getting a 1.05 return on ad spend, now it's $2,000. In 4 weeks, it'll be $4,000. If you keep seeing it and you're realizing you're doubling every 2 weeks, 26 weeks, what do you wind up with?
Tell me the math quick.
I mean, it's crazy. It's
Yeah.
like if you take $1,000 and you double it every 2 weeks, in 26 weeks, you're looking at probably hundreds.
When you say double it, you mean double the investment? Or
Well-
you're saying the return becomes double because that's just how the algorithm works?
Yeah, it's a mindset thing because it's not about algorithms. We're talking about most people are trying to shoot for the moon, and they want to get a 10x return on their ad
Yeah.
spend, right?
Yes.
where they make the big mistake that they make is failing to actually do the math
This
and
is key.
say that if you're just getting a very slightly positive return on your ad spend and you can sustain that for a year and you just reinvest your profits, I mean, you're literally looking at like billions of dollars at
Yeah.
the end of that year. You know,
Yes.
just take 1,000 and go times 26 times on your phone, your calculator, and you'll see the exponential growth. So 5% doesn't sound like much, but you have to remember this is compounding daily.
And you're
Yeah.
saying most that you worked with didn't get that.
No, most of the people I worked with got better than that. They got, 1.5.
Well,
They
I
got
don't mean that. I mean, is there a resistance in the marketplace for people to not want to wait or step into that? Or
Well, the thing is people are they're impatient.
you're right, impatient.
They're
Yeah,
impatient. They
yeah.
want money now.
We want.
They want to make a
this is our-
bunch of
this is
money
our country.
tomorrow,
Yeah.
right? And this is why most people don't, because if they could just put that $1,000 in there, and if
And
they
be
could
consistent.
and be happy with 1.05 and keep reinvesting it, that money would double every 2 weeks. In 26 weeks,
Yeah.
they would be in a
They'd
different
have it.
universe. Yeah. So, and that's just it, is like marketing and advertising is the best investment vehicle that you can possibly get into if you can be consistent and patient and you understand that, look, you're compounding your gains daily. In the stock market, you might be happy with 10% in a year. So 5% daily
Right.
is like it's not even close, right? And this is the mindset shift you have to make in order to calibrate yourself for success. Now, obviously, just getting consistent return on ad spend it's not as simple as just running one ad and sitting there for a year and having that happen. Of course, the game's
There's a lot of
changing.
variables.
There's competitors coming in. There's a lot of variables and stuff like that. But getting that level of ad spend, it's not the hardest thing in the world to get that kind of return and to sustain it and to have the patience to watch it grow and reinvest all of it. Literally set that money aside and look at it as investment capital
Yes.
instead of I need to pay my bills with this.
Yes.
That's the big thing that people have to make that shift.
That's huge. That's huge
Yeah.
to let people understand that, because more and more people, with technology again, want to become
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurs. I asked that also because you decided to move away from that
Correct.
to where your focus and your passion is, where more of your interest is, and what you've
Correct, yeah.
evolved to.
Mhm.
So, what was it? What aspect of that running a marketing company had you move away from it, even though you
Yeah.
understand the need and what it can do for people? And thank you for that example and that explanation.
Yeah.
But you moved on
Mhm.
because
Well, because it's not that I moved on, because I still do marketing for myself and I still
Yeah.
help, my clients with marketing if
Yeah.
they want help or if they need it.
Right.
Right. Not every client I work with wants or needs it. Some of them have marketing systems that are working better than mine.
Right.
But they'll still come to me because here's the funny thing about this, right? Is that, okay, let's say you blow up your business and you're doing, whatever, tons every month, 100,000, 200,000 a month. And you've got everything delegated and automated and everything's like running real smooth. What's going to determine like your level of happiness and fulfillment? If you've already solved all your business problems, what's going to be the
What's
next
next?
thing? Yeah.
Right.
What is it? Like if you imagined yourself in that situation, what would it be?
Well, that's why I like to focus on health, wealth, and relationships, because it's not just one thing. We can get the wealth component down and get the money flowing from the marketing and ad spend.
It's
but-
all the other part of your life that's
life,
not the
exact-
business side, right?
which is going to segue into, the
Yeah.
King's Chamber. And
Yeah, that's not the business side.
because many men focus in particular, now, I mean, women as well, but they focus on, it's about making money and about wealth creation.
Right. Yeah, I mean, all these things are connected, right? That's the other classic mindset mistake that most American men keep making to their detriment, is they get so business focused that everything else in their life just falls apart.
Yes. Yes.
Like if all you care about is money and you think your only value as a man is how much money you make, then you're going to neglect your health, you're going to neglect your relationships,
Yep.
and you might wind up really rich, but you might like be really unhappy
Be
because
lonely
you're
and
alone,
unhealthy.
and everyone, you can't seem to get any valuable relationships going because now, because you're so wealthy, everyone just wants your money. That's all they want to talk to you about, right?
Right.
Because you become too one-dimensional, and so nobody's with you just because you're, a really like cool guy to hang out with. You just made a bunch of
Made it.
money, and so they
Right.
want to know how, they want a piece of it. They want you to tell them how to do
Exactly.
it. They want a piece of it. So that's kind of that's the double-edged
The
sword.
irony.
The irony of getting to the level of financial success is that it brings with it, if you do it one-dimensionally, it brings with it this whole set of problems that nobody expects coming out the other end.
Exactly.
Like a lot of guys is another thing not many people talk about, but like a lot of guys who get to that point, they wind up badly addicted to alcohol, cigarettes, something. There's
Drugs,
a level of
pills,
stress that comes
porn,
up.
gambling, sex,
Exactly.
all kinds of
All
things.
these things, right? And
Right?
and when you really look at it, they're actually not fulfilled. They're not really happy, even though they solved the financial issue, right?
Yes.
So
Which again brings it's another whole host of problems.
another whole host of
Who
problems.
you
So
attract,
I'm
yeah.
not saying that, it's better to be poor. It's definitely not. But like, the money's only as good as what you can spend it on, right? What you can invest in. And it's only as good as like your discernment in making the right type of investments that actually, are going to result in a fulfilling, balanced life where it's like you're not, eroding one part of your life so you can grow another. Yeah,
Exactly.
because the health, wealth, and relationships thing, yeah, they're the three primary markets, but they actually don't all hold equal weight.
No.
Yeah, that's the thing that people don't really see. When you're young, it's really easy to just focus 100% on the money part of it because, you're young and you don't have to worry about your health usually when you're young,
I
right?
actually believe if you focus on your health and your relationships, then the wealth will come. It's almost like as a foundation, we need to focus on our mental, physical, emotional, spiritual health and well being and the relationships, those people that we are choosing to be in intimate partnerships with, relationships with. How are things with our family? These are the biggest breakdowns I see because I'll work
Mm-hmm.
with a lot of people that have the money game down.
Mm-hmm.
These men have the money game down. And now it's like, so now what?
Right.
Things are falling apart at home in their marriages after 20 years or their relationships with their children. They're super unhealthy or they're addicted, et cetera. So, and then is the money going to buy the relationship or buy their health? I
No.
mean, no. So let's get into that. Let's get
Yeah.
into that has led you to, with Harmonic Awakenings,
Mm-hmm.
getting into the King's Chamber and looking at men, the distinction of different male archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
And so talk to us about that because I really honor, admire, and respect the fact that you are a man who is wanting to lead other men, support other men. I feel that there's a shortage of that, out there of men. There are tons of business consultants. There are other people like you have done working to support in marketing, for their marketing and other business strategies, if you will. But looking at the whole, of a being, and so for their fulfillment and their success is a bit of a miss. And so I find that you're super unique in what you've created and what you're doing with your mastermind today. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's what I really want you to speak into.
Yeah.
What is the King's Chamber? What is the program?
Yeah.
And the different male archetypes in leadership?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll get into that. So, so there's 4 archetypes that I work with, and what I mean by archetypes, if anyone who's listening is not familiar with the word or understand what it means, is they're kind of like roles that you jump into. Like in a company, you have different roles, right? You might have someone who's in sales, so they're the salesperson. You might have, let's look at an ads agency or like a newspaper, right? You've got some people that are the salespeople and they're selling the ads to the businesses. You have the designers who are designing the ads. You have the managers who are managing the whole team. And then maybe you have the owner who owns the business. And these are all different roles that are being played. So I had been working on understanding, in particular, four specific roles that are kind of like
They're
the
not functional, kind of what you just described are more functional roles
well,
versus
they are actually functional. The thing is that they're so deeply embedded in the male psyche that they actually are universal in terms of the male psyche. So the ones I'm talking about specifically are the lover, the warrior, sorry, yeah, the lover, the magician, the warrior, and the king, in that particular order, because there's a sequence to this in the way that even male psychology develops from a young age. So, okay, so the best way to explain this is just to kind of bring you through what the typical journey is in the way your psychology develops as a man. So like when you're a boy, you're born, from the age of like 0 to 3, you're in the archetype of the lover. In the archetype of the lover, it's like you're really close to your mother, you need her, and there's no sense of separation. Oh, there's also no fear. You know how young children, any mother knows, like young children have no sense of fear. Like babies will crawl right off the counter. You have to watch out for them and make sure they don't hurt themselves or put themselves in harm's way because they don't know what
they're
fear is.
unaware.
They don't even know what it is, right?
Right.
They're completely in love, and all they can really feel is like pleasure and pain, but the mind is not really there yet. It hasn't developed to a point of where they can use language and project and imagine. Like they're experiencing the world of the senses, and
In
their
that
mind's
regard, they're
developing.
pure love.
Yeah, they're
With
just
no
pure
fear.
love, right? So that's like around ages of 0 to 3, right? That's the lover archetype, right? It's unity, oneness, and it's just love, and all they're gonna experience is pleasure and pain. It's pretty mindless. It's all emotion. It's all emotional. But then at a certain age, when language is developed and the mind gets to a certain point of development, and the boy like learns how to speak and communicate and all that stuff, he transitions into the magician archetype. And this is what happens when they begin to experience fear. So the main emotion that sort of initiates the transition from the lover into the magician is fear. And when young children begin to experience fear and they start to see threats and they start to project, this is also when they typically begin to lie, right?
Yes.
Mothers know this.
Yes.
They get this, right?
Yes.
Parents know this. And this, that's around usually the age in which a child tells their first lie is around like the age of 3 or 4. Okay? When they start to get command of language and they realize that there's easy, fast ways to trick other people into getting what they want. Right?
Becoming little magicians.
Yeah, little magicians. Exactly. Hogwarts, right?
Right.
And so, and then from the ages of around 4 to, it depends, on like, here's the crazy part of this. So what I discovered in my time in Warrior, which is interesting
Yes.
because Warrior actually lines up perfectly with the archetype after the magician, which is the warrior, is that a lot of men, they actually just never make it out of the magician. Not really.
Lying and manipulating to get
Well,
what
yeah,
they
I mean,
want, and very emotional.
Yeah, and not just men,
Dysregulation.
but like, because there's some parallels there's some parallels between how men develop and women develop. But the reason I've been focusing on men is because it's just, it's easier for me to focus on that and have that because, being a man
Being a
myself, I know what that's like. But here's the thing, like, if you go back to like, the medieval times or whatever, you can see that that like, all right, at a certain point, the boy leaves the mother's house and goes to the father's house and starts to learn, whatever the father's trade was. And, oftentimes at a certain point, especially if the country's at war, he gets conscripted.
Yes.
And has to go out and start fighting, right?
Yes.
And so we live in a society now that's very, very different. And the reason why a lot of guys get stuck in the magician, and what I mean by that is it's like a mental place, right? Like the lover's very emotional, but the magician's very mental. And it's all about like trying to find a hack, trying to find a shortcut, trying to be really clever and create some super clever thing that you can then use to get what you want and get it faster, right?
Yeah.
So the problem, though, is that um, the dishonesty and the deception that's involved, because you can sometimes win and get what you want faster by lying. People get addicted to this. This is the main addiction that fuels all the other addictions, is the deception, because it gives you a shortcut. But there's also the problem is that you're feeding your fear. As long as you're deceiving or lying, you're feeding your fear on some level. Even if you're winning, even if you're making more and more and more money, you're digging yourself deeper and deeper into this hole of where you're affirming the value of dishonesty, and you're putting yourself actually in more fear. And you can become a really powerful magician, make a bunch of money and all that stuff, but people are not going to like you. In fact,
Right.
people are going to start to really hate you.
Yep.
Because they
And you see
feel,
it.
yeah, and you see it.
You see it out there.
Yeah. And so we live in a society now where a lot of men just never make it out of that. And the time in in Wake Up Warrior, it's like, so to move out of the magician, it's like you have to overcome your fear. Yeah, and you have to stop lying. And what this does is it creates a collapse in all of the parts of your life where you have built it on illusion or deception. And a lot of guys aren't willing to pay that price.
I appreciate Garrett White's book, Stop Lying and Start Leading Today.
Yeah, because if you built your whole business on some kind of secret or some kind of, deception or something where you're like withholding, then it's like, yeah, you can get it to a pretty high level, but it could all fall apart if your secret gets out.
Right.
And eventually it will. Sooner or later, someone's going to find out. And when that happens, there could be this huge collapse.
Correct.
So moving into the warrior archetype, it involves this sort of voluntary surrender of the secrets, and starting to, move in from fear into courage, where you're going to, essentially like start the battle of trying to like clean up your life and get rid of all the shadows and cobwebs.
Just elevating consciousness.
And all that stuff. Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And exposing yourself, so that, the world sees you for who you really are, instead of just the facade that you're showing other people. And that comes at a huge price. Oftentimes, when men move into that, their whole life kind of falls apart, because they built so much of their life on this magician energy that, now it's like, wow, it's like almost starting over in some ways. But you're building on more solid ground, because now, the truth is your foundation. And so then you've got this battle that you have to fight as the warrior that's building now on a solid foundation. And when you begin to win that fight, then you begin to transition into the king archetype, because that's when other men are going to start to follow your lead, is when they start to see you winning, and now they want to know how to win too. And that's really what leadership is about. And you can't really, shortcut that. Unfortunately, you have to actually be winning, and leading by example, in order to stay in that energy and eventually transition back to the lover again, because it goes full circle. Because the issue, each one of these archetypes, it has benefits of being in it, but then it also has some problems, that like why you have to keep moving through them and keep going through these cycles. Because even going into the king and you're in leadership, eventually, if you're leading enough people, it's going to start to feel like a burden. Now you don't have any free time. Now everyone's asking you all these questions. People who become famous and everyone wants to know. It's like, oh man, I have no free time. I can't get any. I don't have a life anymore, because the crown becomes heavy, right? And then a lot of these guys will just like sell their company or do something like that, because they just want to start something new. They want to do something different. So then they go right back into the lover again and start from square one, doing something that's more fulfilling. Right. So, so anyway.
Does a king actually embody? Because would you say there's a negative connotation to being a magician?
There's a negative connotation to every one of the archetypes, and there's a positive.
Lover doesn't sound like it,
and
right?
there's a positive.
Warrior sounds like we're up leveling, but there's something about the magician. But ideally, the king as a leader is sort of embodying and fluidly moving through, as you're describing, the different archetypes.
Well, no, I mean, it's about, so here's the issue. Most men, they just never even make it around the circle in their whole life.
Right. They're stuck in lover or magician.
Well, they bounce back and forth between those. They never really, expose themselves and overcome their fear of being exposed. So then they never
Yes.
really move into the warrior, because that's what you have to do.
Yes, which I really
Yeah.
appreciate about you, because you are leading what you live, and it's out there. You are very transparent and authentic, and I
Thank you.
appreciate that. So I've gotten to know you. I watch you from afar. So one can't really lead authentically if you're not being transparent about who
Yeah.
who you are.
Well, to answer your question though about the magician versus the king, they're not, they're to some extent diametrically opposed energies, because the magician is all about figuring stuff out and being clever, and that's how he wins his game, is being the most clever person. But really, the best job for the magician is to make it easier for the warrior to win, right? If you look at historically how wars have been won, it's like, is it really the strongest guy, or is it the guy with the best weapon that wins the war? Who makes the weapons? Usually not the soldiers. You got the blacksmiths and, Oppenheimer and guys like that. These are the magicians, right? So there's cleverness, but there's not a lot of emotion there. Whereas the king, actually, he wins by commanding loyalty. And the reason why there's more value there is because an ounce of loyalty is worth a pound of cleverness.
Yes. Prince Machiavelli's The Prince is coming to mind. Would you rather be loved or feared?
Well, yeah, I mean, these are just different ways to kind of approach, life. And you need, if you really want to be fulfilled as a man, you have to learn how to ground all of these different archetypes and move fluidly through them. Because there's going to be times when the magician is the only thing that's appropriate. If you're about to go into battle and you don't have a weapon, you need to be the magician and create your weapons and get yourself weaponized for the war. If you try to skip the magician, you go straight into the warrior, but you're like trying to fight with a fist and other people have, fighter jets, then you're probably not going to win, no matter how clever you are or how strong you are. So it's like so there's this thing of where you're starting in the lover, and the thing about the lover is you got to make sure that you're picking the type of work or the thing that you're doing where it's like you really love it and it fulfills you, right? Because if you pick the wrong thing just because you're trying to copy somebody else or something, then you're going to,
for the sake of the money.
or so for the sake of the money, right? Then you're going to find that even making a lot of money doing that thing doesn't fulfill you.
Right.
Right? So that's kind of the main thing to get about the lover, is that you have to commit yourself to something that's actually you enjoy doing, right?
Yes.
That way you're going to do it, you're going to practice it, you can
Do
be
what you
consistent.
love, and then you'll love what you do, and it won't feel like work.
Exactly. But if all you do is what you love and you never move from the lover into the magician, then it's like you never build the right weapons that you need to get some kind of an advantage, right? And this is where things like marketing and systems and ads and all this stuff come into play. And regardless of what it is you love, you still got to market it, and you still got to sell, and you got to find a pitch.
You need a strategy.
And you need a strategy. You need some kind of technology, And these days, marketing is not fought with fists. It's like battle bots. It's like my AI against the AIs of everybody else. Right? That's kind of how it is now. So it is magician work to try to program these things and get them out there.
How can I get more exposure than my competitors, more attention?
Yeah. And so, but, no amount of cleverness is ever going to substitute for actually deploying the weaponry. That takes courage, and it takes more courage now than it used to back then, because the amount of risk that you're taking on when you're trying to build these big automated systems that are getting customers for you and all this stuff, there's so much automation that there's way less room for error in deploying it. So that still takes courage. Like even if you're not the one actually fighting and your drones are all fighting for you, like
You better know how to operate the drones.
yeah, there's still a war happening,
Yes.
and you're still having to compete, for attention and for customers and all the rest of that. So you have to move into the warrior and stay there long enough that you have a chance of winning. And that's what, going back full circle to that whole mindset thing. It's like, Look, if you're getting a positive return on your ad spend, you're winning. Don't stop. A lot of people, it's like, okay, but we're not winning to the degree that I want to. Well, as long as you consistently win every day, you will get ahead of everybody else.
Absolutely.
You know, that's the problem is most people, they're so concerned about being so far ahead of everybody else that they actually never get anywhere.
Consistency.
Yeah, they might win at first, but then, you know, it flips back around and they shut everything down and then they don't keep going. And without that consistency, it's like they don't develop the level of skill and insight and expertise necessary to get to that place of being elite. So that's where staying in the warrior long enough to win is really one of the most important lessons. Once you start winning, then you need to start leading other people, because without the support and the loyalty of other people that are without actually really leading them and serving them well, the problem is you can't delegate effectively and you can't automate everything. We live in a world where everyone wants to automate everything and you can't. There are certain things you have to delegate.
Yes.
And you're not going to delegate effectively
Build
to people,
leadership in others.
yeah, to people who are not loyal to you. If they're just looking for a job and they want to leave, yeah, maybe they're worth hiring for a while. But ultimately, if you really want to build a business that's going to stand the test of time, you know, you've got to get people who are in it for better reasons than just getting a paycheck. And you're not going to be able to attract those people without a vision, without being super clear on like what your mission is. This is where all this visionary leadership stuff involved with things like meditation and spiritual practice start to become really valuable, because that puts your energy in a place of where people are inspired by you, and it's a different kind of thing. They're not just going after you because they want a paycheck or they want a piece of your money, but because you're an inspiring person to be around.
By your example.
Yeah, because there's magic happening around you. They can feel it. You know, there's this thing going on that it's just like you're blowing their mind on some level.
What is the greatest, and so is that the missing piece that you focus on in the King's Chamber, is ideally taking men who are in sort of that magician, some are sort of still in the magician, many may have evolved to being a warrior, and the thing is maybe there's a lack of consistency. They know there's another level for them, but not maybe even aware of what's missing, what's lacking, how to go from the warrior to the king. What are the greatest challenges for a man to go from being a successful warrior out there to being a king?
Yeah, so the main thing is you have to become a winner. When you first move from magician to warrior, usually you lose a lot.
Yeah.
You know, there's a massive price to be paid in exposing yourself and, you know, letting the truth come out.
So that's where the freedom is.
Yeah. So, but that's where the real battle is first won, is in that exposure and in the sort of cleansing of the soul that happens by getting rid of all the BS in your life and being real. But then you still have to like build up, you still have to fight, you know, you still have to go out there and build something and create something and all of that. So transitioning from the warrior to the king, and the reason why I called it the King's Chamber, is that like the main thing that gets you there is, number one, winning.
Right.
And you're not going to win unless your magician did a good job in arming you, because the magician on its good side, you know, like in its highest expression, what the magician does is alchemy and science, not illusionism. And so if you did a good job with your magician going through the cycle, then the warrior is well armed. And all he has to do is push buttons, basically, and he wins. He doesn't have to go out there and grind, you know? And so, but if your magician was an illusionist, then everything falls apart. And that warrior phase is going to feel like, oh my God, I'm fighting alone with my fist, like to crawl out of a pit, right? That's the difference. So moving from the warrior to the king, that has a lot to do with, well, are you winning or not? And you may not be well armed, but you still are going to have to get some kind of win for anyone to want to follow you, to want to follow your lead.
Absolutely.
You need that, right? And so whatever your battle is as a man, regardless of how much fell apart or whatever, you have to pick a weapon and start shooting, basically. And I'm using this as a metaphor, and it's important to recognize that, like, I'm all about peace. And actually what this war is it's all about helping people. It's all about trying to, give solutions to problems that people have.
And there
So
are major conflicts.
you're actually not trying to
conflict resolution.
hurt anybody.
Yeah.
You're trying to help people out. That's really what the war is. But we just happen to live in this world where there's so little trust that they think that if you're trying to help them, that, oh, what do they want from me, right? There's this massive trust deficit we're dealing with right now. And so it's a battle just to get somebody to, like, believe you that you actually want to help them.
That you're not full of shit and you really just want to help them.
Exactly. So moving into the king energy really involves just winning. And once people see that you're winning, and once you know that you're winning, then you're going to naturally kind of go there. And other guys are going to want to follow you. And, and it also helps with your relationships too, because
absolutely.
Women want to be with guys who are winners, not losers.
100%. I can attest to that. Wow, this is amazing. It's great that you have this this mastermind that you've evolved to. And I think it's probably for you, before we wrap up, that leads me to how much more fulfilling is it to be working with men and evolving to the king and creating this mastermind versus working on marketing strategies, for example. And what have you learned in the process as a leader of leading men in this process? Because while you are offering your gifts, your wisdom from your knowledge and experience, and this incredible life that you've led and experienced, what's coming up for you? What are you learning in this process?
Well, the transformation that I've experienced since I started the King's Chamber in January has actually been really interesting and different than I had even expected. Probably the main win that I've gotten is just in my health and my fitness. I lost 10 pounds in 6 weeks.
Excellent.
And I experienced like a transformation in the way that I feel about my body and the way my body can perform that I've been trying to get for years, but I just never got it because I didn't have the right process in place to actually, consistently lose weight and build muscle at the same time. It was actually way simpler than what I thought it would be before. I just wasn't doing it. So I wasn't getting the results I needed to get. It was like my magician hadn't armed me to properly win that battle. But when I got that, I managed to have that happen. So that's one big thing. I freed up a bunch of time as well. And so the amount of meditation I'm doing each day, it went up from last year, it was maybe 12 minutes a day. Now it's like 2 hours a day that I'm doing that, and to my own music that I created. And I'm guiding the other guys through it as well. So in my health and wellness, that has lit up, and I began winning that on a much higher level than I ever have before, just because I started tracking what I was doing with the body. And I really got serious about spending enough time in meditation to stabilize my emotions and my mind so that I could really lead well. It was necessary for me to hold the energy for these guys that I'm helping out with this.
You're called to rise as a king.
Yeah.
If you're going to lead others in that path, you were then inspired yourself to step up.
Correct.
Step up
Yeah.
your game and your leadership.
Yeah, because you have to remember that there's still this necessity to push forward.
Yes.
And in being a king, it's not like the war is over, right? It's just that
Never over.
in leading, well, at a certain point you have some level
Yeah.
of victory, and you can
Yes.
celebrate and kind of go back to the lover for a while.
Right.
And then, ruminate and come up with ideas and then strategize
But
of
this
what
life,
your next
this
campaign's
game
gonna be.
of life that we're playing is, it's infinite.
Yeah, it's infinite. You keep going around
So-
this circle. But yes, as you step into it, at a certain point, if you're called into leadership, it's important to step into it because that's just the beginning of the circle, right? These archetypes have different divisions in them, right? The early phase king is very different than the late stage king. Same thing with early phase magicians, very different than late stage magician. And so there's a process for each of these things that I've been working on, kind of getting more specific and distilled as to the sub phases of them, just to help because that's what we do in the mastermind. We kind of help identify with each person who's in there, where are they in this circle in their business and all that stuff.
Yep.
And
In their
therefore,
health,
like,
wealth, and
what's the
relationships.
next step
Yes.
for them, right? So that they can start moving a little faster around this circle to speed up their progress. And it's very ironic because oftentimes, the reason why people get stuck in one of those places, whether it's the magician or whatever, is because they're actually trying to move too fast. You know, like one of the biggest breakthroughs I had in my
Just
fitness,
slow down to speed up.
yeah, was that, like, running a mile, when I first timed myself in running a mile last month, I could do it in 9 minutes. When I decided that instead of running as fast as I could and then walking, and then running as fast as I could and then walking, and doing that, like running the mile that way, which wasn't even really running the whole time, it was like back and forth. When I decided instead, I just need to try to keep a steady pace, even if I feel like I'm going slower, I cut it down to 8 minutes.
Interesting.
And I hadn't really lost any weight. I mean, it was like a few days between those times. So that was just a mindset shift of like, okay, instead of trying to go as fast as I can and then exhausting myself and having to slow down, why don't I just try to see if I can keep a consistent pace?
Steady wins the race.
Yeah.
Steady
And
wins the race.
it's the classic tortoise in the hare situation, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Brennan, thank you so much for coming today.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I really, really appreciate what you're up to. It's needed. We are in a world of magicians. We're trying to get a lot of men just to take on warrior, take off the masks and rise to the next level and make sure they have the right tools that aren't doing too much destruction. And then the next level is king. And at harmonicawakenings.com, you can find Brennan Murphey and The King's Chamber. The program really is, he's being very humble. It's actually really an excellent program and mastermind for men in particular in leadership, executives, entrepreneurs, and founders in their field to go through with Brennan. So thank you again for being here. And I look forward to my future guests. You'll check out Lead What You Live podcast with Tina Lizzie. I am focusing, if you are a leader in your field, I want to talk to you. And life strategy. We're all playing a game of life here. It's infinite, as you heard me say. And it helps if you have a strategy, and a plan. And that's my jam. Lead What You Live podcast with Tina Lizzie.